Today I'm going to show you 3 ways to bring USB power to the handlebars of your motorcycle. If you stick around to the end, I'll tell you which solution I like and show you why I think it's the best. The Triumph being a European bike, the 12 volt socket is a little bit different. I'm here in the United States, and so the car lighter socket that you might have in a US automobile is different than the power socket on these European bikes. So can't just plug a standard USB charger like you might get in a US automobile into one of these, but they do make the next best thing. But they have this DIN compatible plug on the end. They've got a rubberized rain shield on them. I'm confident it's not waterproof, but it's probably water resistant, and being behind your windshield, it likely wouldn't get direct rain while you were riding. And it does have this shield, so for the most part you're okay, except of course when you open it to use it, unless you've got something in both sockets, and even then rain's likely to accumulate on your cord, and well, there's a good chance it would run down in there if you were to use this style in a heavy rainstorm. But in terms of ease of use and plug and play, I mean, it just couldn't get simpler to get 5 volts to the front of the bike. You take this plug it in right here, and boom, you can see 12.1 volts on the battery, and you've got 2 hot plugs right there that'll give you USB power to whatever accessories you want up here. You couldn't get any easier than that. And then when you're done, you just unplug it, put it back in your bag or take it in the house, and then when you need to go again, you plug it in, and there you go. You've got 12 volt power. The next, in terms of convenience, is getting a USB charger that has one of these SAE 12 volt connectors on the end, and buying an adapter that goes from the DIN socket on your bike to an SAE 12 volt connector on the other end. In that case, you just plug in the charger into one end of the cable. You plug the DIN socket, or the DIN plug, into the socket on your bike, push the button to turn it on, and you've got 12.3 volts. You've got power at the USB port. And again, the reason I like this is you can take this up inside of the bag, keep it protected up inside of your tank bag, and then in terms of convenience, there's no wiring required. It's just plug and play. You put it in, plug it in, put this here, turn it on. You've got 12 volt power for your cell phone, your GPS, and it's protected inside of your tank bag. So this is probably by far and away the next most convenient, and in my mind, super convenient, super easy to use, and it's protected. All of your connections are protected from the weather inside of your tank bag. And you could permanently mount this. I mean, if that was what you needed, you could permanently mount it up here, so you could plug and play things to it, or you could obviously mount it down inside the cowling somewhere, and then just run your cables permanently down to it. If you're just looking for a permanent USB power port, you could mount this down there. But if you were going to do that, I would probably opt for a hardwired solution. But in terms of getting USB charging, this is probably the sweet spot in terms of ease, cost, convenience, and protection for your devices, assuming you've got a tank bag up here. All right, the last option I'm going to show you for bringing power up to the front is to permanently hardwire a power cable into up near the handlebars. You can see what I've got here is hopefully you can see this, hopefully the light's good enough, but I've got a SAE 12 volt socket up here. It's got a cover on it when it's not in use. It's kind of tucked away in the cowling up here, so it's reasonably well protected. If it's got the cap on it, it should protect it from the rain, and when it's in use, the other connector will be plugged into here, so it should be relatively protected. So I think this is a pretty robust solution, and in terms of doing the wiring, it almost couldn't be easier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the wiring of this, and it was almost plug and play. All right, so I'm going to put some links to the items that I bought below. But I bought this cable. You can see the cable is right here. You see it's got the black, the red, and I bought a fairly heavy-duty cable. This one is a 12 gauge. And like I said, I'll put the link to it below. But what was interesting is this is a 1 meter, 3 foot, and it is almost the perfect length. It goes right from the battery, right along here, along the side of the bike, and I'll pull this plastic cover off. Right up here where it can be zip tied, and what I don't have is a wad of wire tucked away anywhere, and it's not too short. I mean, it's just almost couldn't be more perfect in terms of being right here, back to right here, and there actually is a fuse in line, a standard blade style fuse, so it's actually really nice. What I'm going to do is pull some of these out of the way, and what we'll do is we'll take this one plastic panel off right here, and I'll show you how this was. Okay, real quick, how to get these plastic covers off. What you'll see is that I'm going to show you the other side first. There's a single bolt right here. When you pull your sheet off, it'll be very obvious it's connected to the plastic cover. There's an identical one over here. The cable's a little bit over it right now, but you can see the bolt right there. What you do is you'll remove that, and then this plastic cover will pop right out, which I'll do that and I'll show you the routing of this cable. And like I said, it just couldn't be simpler. So something else I'm going to point out is when I bought these wires, and you'll see this in the link below, this cable is just loose wires, two loose wires. They're connected at the 12 volt SAE connector. They're molded in there, but then it just comes back. The hot has a fuse in it, and I'll show that in a second, and then it just comes back to the ring terminal. So it's ready to go, other than you've got 2 loose wires. Now somehow you want to ideally bundle those wires so that they just make a nice protected package as they route through your bike. And you could zip tie them together, and I'll leave some links to some various cable shielding. But that's all this is this just is a plastic cable braid that I've wrapped around the 2 wires to keep them bundled together and to protect them from wear or rubbing while they're mounted inside the bike. And like I said, I'll put a link to a couple different types of cable braid. But in order to install this, I didn't have to cut the cable, didn't have to crimp anything on the cable. The cable was almost the perfect length. I just had to remove this strap so I could remove my battery cover, remove the 2 screws, put the terminals on it, and for goodness sakes, make sure you get the red on the hot and the black on the ground so that there's no reverse voltage protection in these cables. It's just cable. You want to make sure you got red to hot and black to ground so that when you plug your devices in up at the front, the polarity is correct. And then route it up along here. Like I said, let me pull this cover off and I'll show you where it's routed, and then it'll go right up to the front, and then I just zip tied it to the frame underneath here. So now I can take this and wiggle this out. It just pops on there. Come on. It's got this strap on it. There we go. Yeah, it just slides up on this nub right here on the plastic, so it just slides on there. All right, I'm going to show you how I wired this in. All right, so we've got the 12 volt ground, got this wire, it's got its protective sheath on it. You pull that little cover off, and you can run it right up along the frame, keep it tucked in out of the way. Like I said, this one is pretty nice. It's got a nice cover here for the fuse, keep it protected from the weather. It's on there pretty tight. Come on, there we go. So you can put in whatever amp fuse you think is appropriate, but it's just a standard blade style fuse. Then you put the cover back on, nice and sealed. Keep it tucked up here in the frame of the bike, protected away from any elements. Tuck the cable back up in here. I mean, really couldn't be any simpler. Didn't have to do anything to the cable. If you use the cable that I'm pointing to below, it'll just go right in. It'll give you a SAE 12 volt connector up front.
So if we want to get USB power at our motorcycle handlebars, the easiest way to do it is just buy one of these 12 volt to USB converters. See, 2 USB ports that have a DIN connector on the converter. So you take this, you plug it directly into the DIN socket at the front of the motorcycle, and immediately have two 5-volt USB sockets. It also has a battery level indicator, 12 point something volts or whatever your battery's at. So that's a nice feature, but it couldn't really get much easier than that. Plug it in, you've got 5 volts USB. We have a solution not too much different than the easiest solution in that we have a 12 volt to 5 volt USB power converter. It has this one has an on-off switch, so that's kind of nice. It has also a voltage level meter on it, which is again okay. And for this solution, what we do is we get an adapter like this that will take you from the motorcycle's 12 volt DIN plug out to a 12 volt SAE style plug. And with this, we can plug these together. And now we can remotely or permanently mount the 5 volt USB converter away from down where the DIN plug socket is. I'll put links to these in the description below. These are actually, when I purchased them, two separate pieces. Bought the DIN to SAE12 converter, and then I actually bought a little kit for the 12 volt to 5 volt USB converter, and it came with a bit of a adapter cable. In this case, it has an SAE 12 volt on both ends, has a little holder adapter to mount it to your handlebars or to some loose bolt. You hook this to this and you'll mount it to your bike somewhere. So this was one kit, and this was another piece. But with these two pieces, there you really are back to a plug and play, but you now have the advantage of being able to remote mount or permanently mount, or plug this into your bike's power and then put this into a protected case like a tank bag. And this solution is very similar to the middle solution in that we're still going to need two pieces. We have the 12 volt to 5 volt USB converter that we talked about before when we had just a DIN plug adapter. What we're going to do is permanently mount a wiring harness in our bike that goes from the battery terminals up along the frame of the bike out to a SAE 12 volt connector, to which we'll plug in the 12 volt to USB converter. And in this case, we can do something similar. We can permanently mount this somewhere near the handlebars. We can slide this up into a tank bag. We can put it somewhere shielded and protected. This particular cable that I purchased, it is 3.3 feet, so about a meter. They make these in different lengths. And in this case, this 1 meter length, 3.3 feet, was almost exactly what was needed to go from the battery under the seat of my bike up to the handlebars. And so when we get on the bike, you'll be able to see that. But if you make sure to order one, if you pre-measure roughly what you need to get from your battery to your handlebars, and then order one about the right length, what I find is that it already has the connectors on the end, already has the fuse holder in the middle of it ready to go, and has the 12 volt SE connector with a weather cap for it. So really is a pretty simple and robust solution, and gives you a lot of flexibility about bringing 12 volts up to the front of your bike with a SAE 12 volt connector, which you can plug into gloves, put it into a splitter, heated gear, or of course into a charger.
And something else I'll point out that I like about this one is you can choose to mount this one up on your handlebars so that you've got 12 volt power up here. You can permanently mount it. It does come with a little mounting bracket that you can hook to your handlebars, make it reasonably robust, little proof to vibration. Still has the same problem of water tightness. It does have a rubber cap when you're not using it, but of course as soon as you've got it open for one, you run the risk of getting water either in the other or having water accumulate on the cord and run down into it. So again, not some risk of water infiltration into it. But one of the nice things about this style is if you have a tank bag like this, what you can do is similar to putting your phone in the bag, running the USB out the access port down to the other 5-volt charger is similarly, you can run this cable up inside of the bag, up through the access port, plug in your USB charger inside of here, and then have it all sit down inside your bag where it's actually relatively watertight, and then just run your USB cord up to your phone. And this would go out this front access port here, down to power, if you, or however long your cable is, down to power up front if you've got power up front. And then you can, like I said, keep this inside, keep it shielded, open it up, have 2 devices in here, maybe have your phone sitting in the top here being charged, or a GPS or camera down inside of here, weather protected, also getting charged. So whether you mount this one outside or in your bag, I kind of like this one because of that convenience of being able to keep it tucked away in your tank bag or being able to permanently mount it. So this one I actually like.
Hopefully between these 3 solutions, you find one that works for you. We go from the simple plug and play of a DIN to USB adapter all the way up to a permanently wired 12-volt solution up to the front of the bike. Brings you out a SE 12-volt connector that you can then wire into whatever accessory that you want.